The sky was not like any sky Kale had ever seen. Shadows pooled like ink between the jagged peaks of broken towers, and a pale violet sun cast long, trembling light over the ruined city. The wind carried the scent of earth and something metallic, and the forest at the city's edge hummed with quiet life, though no bird or animal could be seen. Kale tightened the straps on his pack and adjusted the small lantern at his side. Every step he took across the cracked stone streets echoed like a drumbeat in the empty world. He had come seeking legend, a being whispered about in the corners of human colonies, a woman whose beauty and power had survived centuries, whose eyes were said to hold storms and secrets alike. The stories called her Leora. No one had ever seen her and returned unchanged. That fact alone made Kale's heart pound, not with fear but with a strange thrill. He had always been drawn to the unknown, to mysteries that hummed beneath the surface of life. He had always believed that some truths were worth the danger, no matter the cost. The streets were quiet, almost impossibly so. Broken signs swayed in the wind, and fountains that had once been alive with water now dripped only stagnant liquid into cracked basins. Vines crept along the ruins, glowing faintly with phosphorescent green light, curling around stone like tendrils of memory. The city itself seemed alive, and Kale felt eyes watching him, though he could see nothing. He paused, listening. The forest whispered. Leaves brushed together like fingers. Then through the mist he saw her. She was standing on a hill beyond the city where the ruins ended and the wild began. At first she was nothing more than a silhouette, a shadow against the pale light. But as he focused, he saw the subtle shimmer of her skin, the way her hair fell like silver waterfalls, and the curve of her form that seemed both human and not. The air around her shimmered faintly, bending like heat above a flame. Kale's breath caught. His heart was a wild drum, and yet a strange calm filled him too, as though the world itself was holding its breath. He had expected beauty, yes, but not this. This ethereal, impossible presence that seemed woven from moonlight and quiet storms. Slowly he stepped forward. His voice, when he spoke, sounded small in the vast, silent city. "Hello." The moment stretched, trembling like a candle flame. Her eyes were a color he had never seen, a swirl of violet and silver that seemed to pierce through time itself. In them he saw centuries, betrayals, grief, loneliness, and curiosity. She was looking at him not just as a stranger, but as something more, a challenge, perhaps, or a test. She tilted her head slightly, as if measuring him, weighing something invisible. Her lips parted faintly, and for a moment Kale thought he heard a soft sigh in the wind. Then she spoke. Her voice was low, smooth, and carried a weight of authority he could not place. "You shouldn't have come." I had to see," he said, though his voice betrayed him, trembling with awe and fear. "I had to know if the stories were true. They bind you to expectations, and expectation is often pain in disguise." The wind whispered around them, tugging at Kale's clothes and hair. The forest shimmered at the edge of his vision, alive with quiet, unseen motion. And then she did something unexpected. She smiled. It was a smile that was not entirely a smile. It was sorrow and amusement and warning all at once. And in that moment, Kale felt something he had not expected, a pull, a tug at the very core of him, as though his heart recognized hers even before he had truly seen her. "You are far from home," she said, "far from everything you know, and yet, here you are. Or is this just another story?" "Not anymore. I've traveled too far, seen too much to be afraid. Follow me, but know this, once you cross this line, there is no turning back. You will see things you cannot unsee. You will feel things that may break you. And yet, perhaps you will find what you are looking for." Every step he took seemed to echo in time, each crack of stone beneath his boots loud in the eerie stillness. The forest ahead was alive, glowing faintly with green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Shadows shifted and stretched, as though the trees themselves were aware of their intrusion. Leora moved ahead of him gracefully, almost floating over the uneven ground. Her presence made the forest feel sacred, untouched by ordinary life. Kale could not help but notice the way the light clung to her skin, highlighting curves and angles in a way that seemed impossible. She was beautiful in a way that defied description, not just in form, but in essence, in the aura that surrounded her. "You have traveled far," she said, her voice breaking the silence like a gentle chime. "Many do not make it this far. They are frightened by shadows or lost in illusions. You have something different, something persistent. Even if it frightens me. And all have failed, why should you be any different?" And then unexpectedly she smiled again, faintly, almost sadly. "Perhaps," she said, "perhaps you are different, but the path ahead is dangerous, What you seek may not be what you find, and even if it is, it may cost you more than you imagine. The forest seemed to respond, parting slightly to reveal a hidden path winding deeper into the trees. "This way," she said. "And remember, every step you take here changes you. There is no return. Once you walk this path, you belong in part to this world and to me." Each step seemed to hum beneath his feet, the air thick with magic and secrets. The forest whispered around them, alive with unseen motion, and the ruins behind them faded like a memory. And then, as they moved deeper into the shadows, Leora spoke one last time, her voice soft but carrying weight beyond understanding. "But now that you have, the choice is no longer yours." Cale knew with a certainty that shook him to the core that he had crossed the first threshold, and that his journey with Leora, the alien woman whose reaction had shocked him, was only just beginning the hidden path wound deeper into the forest, twisting like a living thing, glowing faintly under Leora's soft steps. Cale followed closely, his every sense alert. The trees here were taller, their trunks smooth and silver, their leaves shimmering with faint violet light. Strange flowers opened and closed in rhythm with the wind, and the air smelled of wet stone and ancient magic. Cale tried to speak, but the words felt inadequate. Where are we going?" he finally asked. Leora's gaze flicked back toward him, her expression unreadable. "I will show you a place where few have set foot," she said. "A place older than this city, older than the human worlds. There you may learn what you seek, but it will not be easy." He had already crossed a line, and curiosity, like fire in his chest, pushed him onward. After a long walk, they reached a clearing. At the center rose a palace carved from crystal, its surface reflecting the violet light in shards like liquid glass. Strange, delicate runes shimmered along the walls, pulsating with energy Cale could feel in his bones. It was beautiful beyond beautiful, but also intimidating, as if the palace itself was alive, aware of their presence. Leora paused at the entrance, her hand brushing the crystal surface. It rippled beneath her touch, then solidified. "This place has kept me safe for centuries," she said softly. "Few are allowed here, even fewer are trusted." "And I'm trusted." The silence stretched, filled with unspoken questions. Cale's eyes swept across the interior, a vast hall with floors that glowed faintly beneath their feet, arches that curved impossibly high, and shadows that moved as if alive. "You must understand," Leora said finally, her voice echoing softly, "that what you see here is not merely a home. It is a reflection of what I have endured. This palace remembers everything, pain, betrayal, loss, but also the rare moments of joy I have known. Few ever step inside and leave unchanged. I want to know your story. I can't ignore this. I can't ignore you." They walked through hallways that seemed to shift subtly as they passed, doors appearing where none had been before, and hallways stretching longer than reason allowed. It was disorienting, yet Cale trusted her completely. Finally, they reached a chamber filled with light that seemed to come from nowhere. At its center floated a delicate sphere, glowing with a soft silver light. Cale felt a pull toward it, as if it called to his heart. "This is part of me," Leora said, stepping beside him. "A fragment of my life, my past, my memory. It holds things I cannot speak aloud, events I cannot undo. I have lived through betrayal, human and alien alike. I have trusted and I have been hurt. And yet I survive, I endure, but each time the cost is greater. But understand this, what you see here is only a shadow of reality. My life is not yours to claim. You may choose to walk beside me or walk away, but nothing in between exists. Centuries ago, humans tried to claim what I possess. A man, someone I trusted, sought to bend my power to his will. He failed and I endured, but the cost was immense. Since then, I have avoided human worlds, avoiding anyone who might awaken the pain buried in my heart." "Why?" He wanted to ask more to understand what she meant, but the air shifted, and a chill ran through the palace. Shadows seemed to deepen, curling along the walls, moving as if they were alive. Cale instinctively reached for Leora's hand, and she did not pull away. "They are coming," she said quietly, her voice tense. "A presence from my past, one I hoped I would never face again. You may think you understand me, but there are depths even I have not fully faced. This is the one who betrayed me centuries ago, and now it has returned. Many who face it are broken before they even begin." "Stay behind me," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "Watch, learn, survive. And the one who betrayed me, it still seeks to take what is mine." The shadow moved closer and Leora's light flared. The air crackled, and for a brief moment Kale felt as though the world had narrowed to this one room, this one confrontation. Then Leora turned slightly toward him, her eyes meeting his. "Remember this," she said softly yet firmly. "Nothing here is as it seems. Trust what you feel, but be wary of what you see. And know this, your journey has only begun." The shadow shifted again, and Leora's eyes hardened once more. "Prepare yourself," she said. "The first test is upon us." Because somehow, he knew, nothing in the universe would ever feel as real as this moment, this encounter, this alien woman who had turned around, and whose reaction had shocked him to the very core of his being. The forest beyond Leora's sanctuary was unlike any place Kale had ever known. Trees rose like silver towers, their branches curling toward the violet sky. Strange mosses glowed faintly along the ground, and vines twisted through the air as if they were alive. The ruins of the city lay scattered between the trees, broken walls and toppled towers half hidden in shadows. The whole world seemed to breathe around them, aware of their presence. Kale followed Leora closely, his eyes darting to every shadow, every shimmer of movement. She moved with a grace that seemed impossible, almost floating over the uneven ground. Her presence made the forest feel sacred, as though the trees themselves bent to acknowledge her. "You must understand something," Leora said softly, her voice breaking the quiet hum of the forest. "This place is alive. It tests all who enter. It will try to show you what you fear, what you desire, what you are not ready to face. Trust, that is more dangerous than any monster you will see here." A soft, eerie light shimmered along the trees, and Kale realized that the path behind them had disappeared, swallowed by darkness and mist. Leora stopped. "The trials begin now," she said. "Stay close. Do not let your fear control you." From within it came whispers, soft, teasing voices that called Kale's name, whispering promises and fears alike. The air seemed to grow heavier, each breath a struggle. Kale clenched his fists, remembering Leora's words. He could feel her beside him, calm, unyielding. He drew a deep breath and stepped forward. The whispers tried to confuse him, to lure him away from the path, but he focused on her presence. Each step toward her was a step away from the shadows that sought to twist his mind. "You are stronger than most," Leora said quietly, walking beside him. "But strength alone will not save you. You must be steady, focused. And you must trust yourself as well as me." Broken towers rose like jagged teeth from the ground. The air smelled of damp stone and old magic. And then Kale saw it, a shadow moving across the ruins, shifting its form, impossible to define. "That is the one from my past," Leora said quietly, her voice tight. "The one who betrayed me centuries ago. It has returned, drawn by your presence." The shadow moved closer, its form flickering between human and alien, its eyes glowing faintly with malice. He instinctively stepped behind Leora. "Stay behind me," she said firmly. "Watch and learn. Do not act unless I ask." He felt fear rising, but he forced himself to focus on Leora, to anchor himself to her presence. "You are afraid," Leora said softly, though her eyes never left the shadow. "Good. Fear is not weakness. It is awareness. Use it. Do not let it control you." The shadow hissed, a sound like wind through broken glass, and charged toward them. Leora moved with fluid precision, her hands tracing patterns in the air. Energy rippled outward, striking the shadow and forcing it back. The forest seemed to respond to her will, branches twisting and vines moving to block its path. Kale felt the power around them, overwhelming and beautiful, and he realized that this was not just her strength, it was her connection to the world itself. "You see," Leora said quietly, "this is why I am cautious. Power can protect, but it can also consume. This shadow is a part of me, and yet it is not. It is a remnant of betrayal, of trust broken, of pain carried for centuries." The shadow lunged again, and Leora met it with a wave of energy that sent it staggering. Kale could see its form flickering, unstable. He realized that it was not invincible. Its power came from her own fear and past pain, and if she could overcome that, it could be defeated. "You must face your past to defeat it," Leora said, her voice calm but firm. "I have faced it countless times. And yet each time it returns stronger. You will see why trust is difficult, Kale, even with me." The shadow lunged one final time, and Leora's energy flared, illuminating the clearing with a blinding silver light. Kale shielded his eyes, feeling the power ripple through the air like a storm. When he looked again, the shadow was gone, dissipated into mist. The forest was silent once more. Leora lowered her hands, breathing steadily. Her eyes met Kale's, and for a moment the distance between them seemed to shrink. "You did well," she said softly. "You did not flee, you did not falter. You trusted, and that trust allowed us to survive. I could not have done it alone." He realized that the distance he had felt from her, the barrier of centuries and power, was slowly breaking. And yet he also knew that much remained hidden, secrets she would not yet share. The forest around them shifted again, the path ahead glowing faintly. Leora turned and began walking, and Cale followed without hesitation. The journey was far from over, and he could sense more trials waiting, challenges designed not only to test strength but to reveal truth. "You have potential," Leora said quietly, almost to herself. "But potential is fragile. It must be tempered, guided, or it will break." She did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked toward the distant ruins where the city's broken towers rose like jagged teeth from the earth. "Potential to endure," she said finally. "To trust, to face what you cannot yet imagine, and perhaps to change what was thought unchangeable." He had expected danger, trials, shadows, but not this. Not the depth of feeling, the sense of purpose, the intertwining of fear and hope that radiated from her. He realized that he was not merely following her through a forest. He was stepping into her world, a world built on centuries of pain, beauty, and power. The sun, or what passed for a sun in this alien sky, was low on the horizon, casting long violet shadows across the ruins. Cale noticed how the light clung to Leora's hair, silver against the darkening world. He felt an ache in his chest, an awareness that the connection forming between them was fragile, rare, and profoundly important. Suddenly, a soft sound reached them, a faint whisper carried on the wind, distant but deliberate. Cale tensed. Leora's eyes narrowed, her body stiffening. "They are watching," she said. "Not just the shadow, others are aware, forces older than this city, older than human memory, and they will test us further." "Then we face them," he said, "together." And yet in the midst of it, Cale felt something steady, grounding him, her presence, her strength, her trust. He realized that this was more than survival. This was the beginning of something deeper, a bond forged in challenge, danger, and understanding. And even though the path ahead was uncertain, Cale felt ready. Because he had chosen to follow her, and he would face whatever trials came, side by side with the alien woman who had turned around and shocked him from the very first moment. The ruins grew quieter as Cale and Leora approached a narrow archway hidden among the twisted trees. The air shimmered, folding like water, and the moment they crossed its threshold, Cale felt the world shift. The familiar forest vanished, replaced by a space of endless mirrors. The realm was both beautiful and unsettling. Every surface reflected not only their forms but fragments of past memories, impossible visions of what had been and what might have been. Colors twisted in impossible ways, and the light seemed alive, bending and folding like liquid. Cale felt a strange vertigo, as if the world itself were breathing. "This place," Cale whispered, his voice trembling, "it's alive. It will test your mind, your heart, and your trust in me." Cale saw versions of Leora he could not have imagined. A child laughing, a young woman crying in the ruins, a warrior alone on a battlefield that stretched beyond sight. And in some mirrors she turned toward him, eyes glowing with sorrow and anger, accusing him silently of things he could not understand. "Do not fear the reflections," Leora said. "They are fragments of memory of life I have carried for centuries. But some are warnings, some are lessons. You must see them, understand them, and let them pass. Do not be trapped by what you see." Each reflection was more than an image. It was an emotion, a story, a choice. And with every story, Cale felt the depth of her solitude, the centuries of betrayal and loss that had shaped her. "You've endured so much," he said softly, his voice echoing strangely in the mirrored space. "And yet, here you are, still standing. Still moving forward." In the center floated a dark shape, shifting, twisting, a shadow that pulsed with anger and malice. Cale recognized it immediately, the being that had betrayed Leora centuries ago. "It waits," she said softly, stepping closer. "It feeds on fear, on doubt, on betrayal. You must be ready. This is not only a battle of strength, it is a battle of will, of hearts." Its form flickered between human and alien, twisting impossibly as it moved. Cale felt a wave of fear wash over him, cold and heavy, but he did not retreat. He looked at Leora, and in her calm, unwavering gaze he found courage. "You must not let it see your fear," she said. "Fear gives it power. Stand with me. Trust me." He took a deep breath, focusing on her presence, on the warmth that radiated from her, on the connection that had grown between them through trials and shared danger. He felt something shift inside him, a strength that came not from skill but from trust. The shadow attacked again, and Leora met it with a burst of light that rippled through the chamber. Mirrors shattered and reformed around them, reflecting fragments of memory and emotion. Kale felt the pulse of her power, overwhelming and beautiful, and realized that it was not just her strength that fought the shadow, it was her will, her heart, and her connection to the world itself. "You see," Leora said quietly, "this is why I am cautious with humans. Power is dangerous, yes, but connection can break the strongest walls or heal the deepest wounds." He wanted to reach out to offer comfort, but he stayed close, learning, understanding, trusting. The shadow surged again, and Leora's energy flared brighter than before. Kale could feel the chamber trembling, the mirrors vibrating with a strange resonance. And then something unexpected happened. The shadow paused, faltered, and seemed to hesitate. "It knows," Leora said softly, "that its hold is weakening, not because of my strength, but because I am no longer alone. Trust, courage, connection. These are forces it cannot command." Through trust, the mirrors around them shimmered, then stabilized. The reflections of past pain, betrayal, and loss were still there, but somehow less sharp, less threatening. Kale looked at Leora, and for the first time he saw her not only as a figure of immense power, but as someone profoundly human in her hopes, fears, and longing. "You faced it well," she said softly. Her eyes met his, and for the first time the centuries of caution and solitude seemed to melt away, replaced by something tentative, fragile, and real. "You did not falter. You did not flee. You trusted me, and that trust made all the difference. You taught me how to stand." He realized that his journey was not only about survival, it was about understanding her, about seeing the truth of her life, about forming a bond that went beyond fear and caution. And in that moment, he felt a connection that was rare, fragile, and infinitely precious. The chamber began to fade, the mirrors dissolving into light, returning them to the forest outside the sanctuary. Kale felt the earth solid beneath his feet again, the scent of moss and stone filling his lungs. He looked at Leora, and for the first time he felt he understood the depth of her solitude and the enormity of the trust she had placed in him. "You have changed something here," she said softly, almost to herself. "Not just the shadow, but something inside me. You matters." It was the first time Kale felt that barrier between them soften, that centuries of solitude seemed to lift even slightly. "The path ahead," she said quietly, "is still dangerous. Forces beyond your understanding will come, and yet, perhaps we can face them together." The forest around them seemed to respond, shadows retreating, light shimmering along the leaves and vines. The ruins stretched ahead, silent but alive with potential. Kale realized that their journey was far from over, that more trials awaited, but he no longer feared them. He had seen her strength, her vulnerability, her courage. He had faced shadows and fear alongside her. And most importantly, he had glimpsed a trust that had been rare in her long life, a trust he was determined not to betray. Leora turned toward the horizon where the violet sky met the twisted trees. "Rest now," she said softly. "We will need our strength for what comes next. And Kale, remember this, connection is powerful, never underestimate it. Even the strongest shadows can be broken by trust, courage, and hearts willing to face what must be faced." And whatever lay ahead, he would face it, not alone, but with her. And for the first time since he had arrived in this strange, alien world, Kale felt hope. Hope that the shadows could be overcome. Hope that the past could be faced. Hope that somehow he and Leora could find a path forward together. The forest was quiet now, the air humming softly, alive but calm. Kale glanced at Leora and she met his gaze, a faint smile touching her lips. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was real, tested by fear and trial, strengthened by trust and understanding. And yet in the distance, faintly, he sensed that other forces were still watching. The trials were not over. The shadows of the past, the echoes of ancient power, they were still there, waiting. But Kale felt ready. With Leora at his side, he would face them all. The journey was far from finished. The heart of this world still held mysteries, dangers, and truths yet to be revealed. And Kale, walking beside the alien woman who had turned around and shocked him from the very first moment, knew that he had crossed a threshold. A threshold into a world of wonder, danger, and something deeper, something that might just change both of their lives forever. The city lay in a strange silence as Kale and Leora approached the heart of the ruins. The violet sky above had darkened into twilight, casting long shadows across broken towers and glowing moss. The air vibrated with a low hum, the pulse of ancient magic that had endured for centuries. Kale could feel it in his bones, a living energy tied to Leora, to the city, and to the past that still lingered like smoke. "This is it," Leora said softly, her voice steady but carrying the weight of centuries. "The final test. What you see here will not just challenge your courage. It will demand your heart, your trust, and your understanding of me. It is ours." He recognized it immediately. It was the being that had betrayed Leora centuries ago, but now it was stronger, more dangerous, feeding on anger, fear, and the centuries of pain she had carried. Kale's heart pounded, but he did not step back. He felt Leora's hand brush his arm, a grounding touch that steadied him. "We face it together," she said quietly. The shadow lunged at them. Leora raised her hands, energy rippling outward like waves across the palace. Kale could feel the force, overwhelming but not crushing, and he realized that Leora's power was not just strength. It was the connection she had to him, to the world, to hope. "You see," she said softly, "it draws power from fear and betrayal. But courage, trust, and connection, those are forces it cannot control." The air itself seemed to tremble as the palace responded to her will. Every broken shard of crystal glowed, forming patterns of protection around them. But the shadow did not vanish entirely. It coalesced once more, now shifting more violently, feeding on Leora's fear, the fear she had buried for centuries. Kale realized that brute strength would not defeat it. It had to be something deeper. "Leora," he said, voice firm, "you are not alone. I'm here. I trust you. We face this together. You don't have to carry it alone anymore." She stepped closer to Kale, her hands glowing with silver light, and together they formed a circle of energy. "You are stronger than you think," Kale said, his voice steady. "We can do this together." The dark figure shuddered, flickering, twisting, and then finally it dissolved into a mist that scattered across the ruins. The energy faded, leaving silence in its place. Kale's chest heaved with exhaustion and relief. He looked at Leora, and for the first time he saw her fully. No walls, no shadows hiding centuries of pain, only the woman she had been beneath it all. "You did it," he said quietly, awe in his voice. "We did it. And we faced it together," he said. "That is what matters. You reminded me that even after centuries, it is not too late to feel, to choose, to be alive." Kale could feel the weight of her centuries of solitude, the depth of her past pain, and yet he also felt the possibility of a new beginning, one built on trust, understanding, and shared strength. "The city," Leora said finally, glancing around. "It has been silent for so long, broken, cursed, waiting for someone to restore it. Perhaps now it can begin again. Then we restore it, together. We bring life back to the ruins and maybe a future too." Broken stones glowed faintly, plants stirred, and the air seemed lighter, freer. The weight of centuries of sorrow lifted slowly, replaced by something new, possibility, renewal, and a quiet joy that neither had expected. Kale watched her closely. Every movement, every gesture carried the grace of centuries and the vulnerability of someone learning to trust again. He realized that the bond between them had become unbreakable, tested by trials, fear, and shared courage. "Leora," he said softly, "you don't have to face anything alone anymore. Not shadows, not past betrayals, nothing. Braver for it, and perhaps ready to walk beside me, not behind me." "You are different," Leora said, her voice soft but certain. "Not like the others. You see me not as a legend, not as a threat, but as a person, and that is rare, precious. Someone I choose." The trials had tested them, forged them, and now they stood stronger, united. As twilight deepened, Leora gazed toward the horizon. Faint shapes stirred in the distance, hints of forces still watching, still waiting. But she did not feel fear. She had Kale beside her, a bond forged in trust, courage, and shared trials. Together they could face whatever came. "Our story," she said softly, "is far from over. The world is vast, and there are more shadows, more mysteries, but we are ready, together." Broken towers glowed faintly, moss and vines stirred in rhythm, and the air vibrated with energy that promised renewal. Kale and Leora walked forward, side by side, knowing that they had faced the past, defeated the shadows, and opened the path to a future built on trust, love, and courage. And as the violet twilight stretched across the city, Leora allowed herself one final glance at Kale. The weight of centuries had lifted, the pain of betrayal had faded, and hope, real, fragile, powerful hope, filled her heart. "You are my anchor," she said softly, her eyes shining, "and I am yours." The ruins were no longer empty. They were alive, just like them. And the alien woman who had turned around and shocked the human had found something she had thought impossible, a companion, a partner, and the possibility of a life beyond solitude. And as night fell, painting the sky with stars unfamiliar and beautiful, Cale knew one thing with certainty. Their story was only beginning, but this beginning was real, lasting, and theirs, woven from trust, courage, and hearts willing to face the impossible together.